I'm happy to introduce Alina SOLTYS. She is a senior analyst at Quorum Group in Seattle, in headquarters in Seattle. She's going to be talking. About the mergers and acquisitions and the major trends and predictions for the industry, especially focused on the Asia market. Alina has been with Quorum Group for 4 years. She has a background in mergers and acquisitions, and she's very active in client engagements and as far as research and finance is concerned. So, Alina, come on up.
Thanks, Jim. Hello, everybody. Thanks for the nice introduction, Jim. Is the volume good? Yeah, great. All right, well, let's get started. My agenda for today is going to go over technology from a higher perspective really quickly. Then we're going to jump straight into the gaming market, as well as taking a look at where the finance and the technology intersects. So talking about M&A, funding, IPOs. And then taking a look at some of the trends that we see happening today and where they're going to take us next. It's interesting and always exciting talking to gaming companies because things move so quickly. Every single quarter there's a new change. You have huge engagement with consumers. 1/3 of mobile apps are games, 2/3 on tablets are games. So you immediately see successes as well as what things need to be changed. So here is a quarterly view of the last 2 years of publicly traded technology firms. This is across the wide variety of everything from IT services to large companies like Microsoft, Google, Oracle. So we saw 2012 as stabilizing after the recession. 2013 continued growing throughout the year. So we hit an all-time high in Q4 here over the last, for the period of this chart. And what that means is the average technology company was trading at 2.4 times revenues or 13.2 times EBITDA. Who were the most active players in the space? This is covering all of technology. And what this really indicates is that the large companies, the Yahoos, the Googles, the Ciscos, they're buying the small, innovative startups that have unique technology and help them grow. At the end of the day, especially with publicly traded companies, they're focused on growth and keeping their shareholders happy. They're doing acquisitions to make this possible. The companies in green are the ones that have been doing gaming acquisitions in particular. So you'll see Yahoo here with 30 transactions, the most acquisitive player in the space last year. They bought Loki Studios and Acquihire. They bought Player Scalar for their infrastructure to allow games to be ported across platforms. And then their latest acquisition just a few months ago was Cloud Party for their virtual 3D worlds. You see Google here with DeepMind, $400 million acquisition. Their AI technology was being tested in a game setting, but we know that Google has larger and grander visions. They're going to be applying it to robotics, to search, to their smart cars. Apple acquired PrimeSense, so the 3D Israeli company that's behind Connect. Another large acquisition, $350 million. We see Facebook, and if you guys were here yesterday morning, there was some gentlemen from Parse talking about how they are using that in the mobile development space and helping make game developers' lives easier. The WhatsApp acquisition is here as well. So that's a quick overview of the top players in technology overall. So let's jump into the gaming side now. In terms of markets, I'm comparing the US here and China. Relatively equal size. China is a bit larger, but the things I want to point out here are where the green arrows are. So no surprise, mobile is up 29%. Free-to-play is up in the US, and that's continuing to drive the expectations for the gaming market. So the average CAGR rate over the next 3 years is expected to be about 7% for the gaming market in general, but 4 times faster for mobile. In China in particular, about 65% of their current revenues comes from client games. So I'm talking about League of Legends, Crossfire. They monetize more than 10 times better than web games. But what you see here is their mobile games are growing even faster than the expected CAGRs that we talked about on the previous page, 250% year-on-year growth. There's 100 games being released every single day by these Chinese developers. It's going to be a very crowded market, and so the idea of keeping in front of customers is going to be on the forefront of everybody's strategy. So let's take a look at the gaming M&A and investments, and here it's updated to Q1 as well. So if we looked at 13, we knew it's a record year, $5.6 billion, but take a look at Q1. We almost surpassed last year's record year within 1 quarter. This is $5 billion of transactions that happened in 3 months. And most of these transactions are coming from Asia. Asia is a huge player in the prior few years. They continue to be a huge player in this quarter, and it's very clear why. So let's talk a little bit more about that. Some representative transactions done by Asian players. The one on top is the most highest paid price, so 13 times revenue is what our Palm paid for PlayCrab. Taking a look at the second one, Baidu purchased 91wireless.com, which is the largest Chinese app store. And the interesting thing here is Baidu paid $1.9 billion, but 91 Wireless does other things apart from just the app store. But in particular regions, such as China, the people who actually use Google Play is a very small percentage. It's about 3.5% estimated. So there's app stores all over the place. This was the largest app store. About 10 billion downloads have been processed through there since day one. And it certainly plays into Baidu's strategy going forward. Tencent, this is the acquisition that helps contribute to that record quarter. They purchased CJ out of South Korea, bought a 28% stake for $500 million. And this is only to say that Tencent really can be very active in the upcoming months as well. They ended the quarter with $5.6 billion in cash, which is driving a lot of this acquisition activity, the huge cash reserves that these companies have. So if we look at Asia, in 2012, they made up top 8 of 10 deals. In 2013, they increased that to top 9 of 10 deals, and they're doing deals all around the world. So the West, as well as the East. There's a lot of regional deals that they're doing to continue expanding within these individual and unique geographies. We see Gameville from South Korea dedicating $130 million for various funding as well as M&A activities. They've already invested into 7 companies and acquired 2 in this last couple of months. We also see kind of the level 2 and level 3 players. So for example, the Indian gaming market is not as large as what we're talking about in South Korea, Japan, and that doesn't mean that they're stuck in that. In fact, 60% of M&A transactions are cross-border, so they're buying into these markets that they want to be in. More specifically, let's take a look at the top Asian gaming acquirers. So this is over the last 2 years. Nexon, including its subsidiaries, purchased 10 companies. They spent over $1 billion in 2012. They added on another 7 companies in 2013. Of course, we have SoftBank here. We have Alpha buying some Beijing-based companies at about 12 times profits, and another one that's a pet-themed game called 4-Inch Nails. You see ZQ Game here, and I pull out these 3 in green in particular because when you're looking at the top media companies in China that are publicly traded, ZQ Game grew the fastest out of that entire category. They grew 235%. Alpha and Our Palm are also in that list, and they grew over 50%. Now, it's hard to grow organically at that rate consistently, and they're using acquisitions to make that happen. IPOs. So prior to the King IPO, Asia was the place where it was all at. In the last 3 years, 13 out of the 15 companies that went public were Asian. We have King here raising $500 million. And what this means at the end of the day is they're under extreme scrutiny by investors. They need to continue to perform. They are at the mercy of their competitors, more so because their competitors are well armed with information about their business, but they've raised money, and they need to use that money effectively to continue growing and continue winning the investors over. So that's good news for companies who are looking for fundraising as well as acquisitions. Another source, a relatively new source of fundraising, is the crowdfunding market. In the US, we have companies like Kickstarter. In Asia, there's even more, each targeted at a certain particular region or a particular focus. And it's incredible to think that in the next 10 years, China is expected to have about $50 billion worth of available funds to invest in the crowdfunding space within 1 year. And we're looking at it from two sides. So there's the consumer side, where everyday people can invest, from a couple of dollars to a couple of $1,000s into a game that they like, as well as the corporate side. So there's a lot of corporate entities like the WeChats, the Singtels, and their funds that are setting aside small percentages of dollars, but they want to help those innovative young companies grow up, as well as move across borders. So that was a really quick look at what's happening in the general market space. So let's take a look at what we see from talking to various gaming companies and various technology companies that are the trends going forward. In Amsterdam, I talked about messaging apps. And back then, so this is 3 months ago, this is almost stale information now if you take a look at all the activity that's been happening. So if we look at the top iOS games in Korea and Japan, 13 out of the 20 were online, the messaging app, last year. It's estimated that around 600 million plus users are currently using these messaging apps. What does that mean for gaming? Well, DNA felt the pinch. Q4, they were down 9%. Q1, they're kind of stemming their losses, they're down 3%. Tencent was ahead of this. They began investing into WeChat. They started adding their own payment system, creating a walled garden around their users so they never have to leave. This has resulted in over almost 400 million players now, and they are continuing to look for developers who would like to be part of this walled garden of theirs or their mobile app. What does this mean? They're developing relationships with high-end game developers, as well as using acquisitions to continue adding new content to WeChat. And if we look at the top game in the Western world, Candy Crush, they're using this strategy and uniting and partnering with WeChat to continue growing in the Eastern markets. So they're not as strong in the Eastern markets. We talked about the diversification of various app stores everywhere. It's hard for discovery oftentimes if there is no social angle being driven. So the WeChat application here and their partnership will really help them step forward into some of these key markets that have been hard to tap. It's interesting to look at M&A. So consolidation happens very quickly in these spaces. Once a large company moves, everybody else jumps on board. So all of these acquisitions and investments happen in a matter of weeks. This has happened in the same space if you look at social media marketing. It happened also very quickly with Oracle and Google buying their buddy medias and their various companies. This happened here as well in the messaging space. So Facebook, of course, acquired WhatsApp. They're worried about their social network. WhatsApp gives them a huge international market presence. WeChat is very strong in China, but this allows Facebook to really cover the rest of the globe. Rakuten did a smaller deal for Viber, paying a lower premium as well. And Alibaba continues to grow out its various assets all over the place. So they purchased a minority investment into Tango to keep ahead of that trend. Second thing that we're thinking about is free-to-play. And mobile free-to-play, I'm sure we've heard it all mentioned very frequently in every single session. The thing I'm thinking about is free-to-play really needs to start transitioning it more into a games as a service. And what that means is that you're continually providing value for your gamers. It's not enough just to win them over once with a download and trying to keep monetizing and figuring out how to keep them playing. You need to continue to provide them a service. And if we look at the rest of the technology world out there, SaaS as a concept, right, so software as a service, is very similar to this games as a service. You're continuing to maintain your product as well as bring new things into the system. And of course, monetization is a key thing to keep track of. You want to be very able to apply your new changes cross-platform immediately. And that's all impacting these top games that we talk about. So the top applications that are over $100 million generating in revenue, 90% of which are free to play. Free to play is not only on mobile apps, it's also moving into the console space. So we see very high quality AAA style games entering the PS4 ecosystem, for example. Warframe was #2 on the PS4 app network after Netflix. And Sony is certainly supporting a lot of the indies out there and helping them self-publish. This generation of consoles has been doing really well, and it's continuing to be further expanded with the introduction of My Box that just came out, as well as with Amazon, Apple, Google, Steam. They're all working on various devices that are going to be in the home, both as gaming machines as well as entertainment-driven machines for the entire family. And then also the new introduction of Microsoft bringing Xbox into the Chinese market will bring a lot more of a variety of players into the space, especially after the 13-year ban in China. So we are certainly going to be looking forward to see how the Chinese players interact with devices that have controllers. That's unique. They haven't been used to that. Are they willing to pay for games and for content? That's also a little different. So that certainly is going to be something interesting to watch for. And lastly, security. Security, if anybody's from the States, everybody was concerned about the target hacking of credit cards. A lot of people were affected. We are living in a world that security is a very top of mind thing, but we all kind of feel relatively safe with the protection in place. Mobile is really the next frontier. The level of internet traffic going through our mobile devices is continuing to multiply every single day. And the fact that 97% of mobile malware is found on Android devices coming from Asia and the Middle East is a significant concern for these large players that have payment services. So we see Qihoo, we see Alibaba and Tencent investing tens of millions into these partnerships. They're acquiring companies. Baidu bought a Californian company. This is going to be the next area of innovation and activity for a lot of these players who need to shore up their security parameters. So to land on this slide, I think one of the most common questions that I get from companies that we talk with is, how much are we worth? And if they're looking forward in time, they're asking the question of, what can we do today to make ourselves more valuable when the right time comes? And given the fact that we have a variety of different companies represented in this room, I thought I would narrow it down to a few key points that are applicable to most everybody. So when buyers look at a smaller company, they're looking at innovation, they're looking at strong technology, and they're looking at growth. And what does growth mean, really? It means that the small size company and your limited budgets that you have on marketing is actually gaining traction. And that's what matters to them. Once you hit a certain peak in growth, they're looking at margins. And the stronger those margins are, the more they pay attention. With a large buyer coming in and acquiring a company, they're looking at scalability. So how fast can you release new versions and have them pushed out to all of your devices? Is it manual? Does it take many revs? Do things break down as you're doing it? Or is it almost a flip of a switch? That's key for them when they're thinking about expanding it to their massive user base. And of course, analytics. So we talk about Asian companies purchasing and doing a lot of these big deals. There's always kind of the conflict of buying a game, right? So Zynga bought a lot of games, and they weren't that successful. A lot of what the Asian companies are buying are a game today, but they're also buying the knowledge that they have about the users. And that's where the analytics come into play. There's only a limited amount of people on this planet that are playing games, and the more they know about each individual as an individual player, the more they can tailor those games to you, and the more they can help on the monetization strategy and grow their companies. I have a few more slides in the appendix, so feel free to contact me for the rest of the slides. I'll make those available to you, and thank you very much.